August 11th, 2025. The South China Sea, one of the most contested waters on Earth, erupted in chaos. Not because of a clash between China and the Philippines, not because of a U.S. intervention, but because China's own warship collided with its own Coast Guard vessel. A catastrophic mistake, a humiliating disaster, and a warning that the world cannot ignore. Imagine this. A 7,500-ton Chinese destroyer, one of the most advanced in Asia, slicing into the bow of a Chinese Coast Guard cutter while the Philippines watched from just meters away. It wasn't a skirmish. It wasn't an accident at port. It happened during a live pursuit at sea. So, how did a superpower lose control of its own forces? And what does this incident reveal about the dangerous game China is playing in the South China Sea? Stick with us, because this story has twists, shocks, and consequences that could ripple across the entire Pacific. Please enter to encourage us to do more videos like this. Please like and subscribe. To understand why this collision is so explosive, you need to understand the battlefield, the Scarborough Shoal, a small reef, barely visible at high tide. But it's a flashpoint that could ignite a regional war. Located about 120 miles off the coast of the Philippines, the shoal is rich in fish stocks and possibly oil and gas. For the Philippines, it's a lifeline for its fishermen. For China, it's a symbol of power projection. Since 2012, China has maintained near-constant patrols here, deploying Coast Guard cutters, maritime militia, and sometimes even naval warships. Its strategy is called gray zone warfare, harassing rivals with non-military ships, blurring the line between policing and war. Gray zone tactics only work if the players stay disciplined. If coordination slips, it can turn into chaos. And that's exactly what happened. On the morning of August 11th, a Philippine Coast Guard patrol ship, the BRP Sulwan, was escorting local fishermen near the shoal. These fishermen had long faced intimidation from Chinese vessels, water cannons, dangerous blocking maneuvers, even threats to ram their boats. China wasn't about to let this patrol go unchallenged. The China Coast Guard Cutter 3104 moved in, firing high-pressure water cannons at the Philippine vessel. But then something unusual happened. A Type 052D destroyer, the Gillen, joined the chase. Normally, China avoids deploying full warships in these encounters. It prefers to use Coast Guard and militia vessels, keeping tensions below the threshold of war. But this time, Beijing sent in a destroyer. Why? To send a message. To intimidate. To show overwhelming force. Yet, this decision would backfire spectacularly. The chase escalated. The Chinese cutter accelerated, maneuvering aggressively to block the Philippine vessel. The destroyer, following close behind, attempted a sharp intercept. But in the chaos, coordination broke down. The destroyer swung across the cutter's bow, steel against steel. A thunderous crash echoed across the waves. The Gillen's massive hull sliced into CCG 3104, ripping through the cutter's structure. The Coast Guard vessel shuddered violently, its bow crumpling under the impact. Within moments, the cutter was crippled, smoke rising, alarms blaring. On the Philippine ship, stunned sailors watched the spectacle unfold. The giant Chinese destroyer had just slammed into its own ally. This wasn't just an accident. It was a humiliation. A superpower, exposed in front of the very rivals it sought to intimidate. China had tried to project power. Instead, it projected incompetence. The Chinese cutter was left dead in the water, bow shattered, its crew scrambling to stay safe. The destroyer sustained damage too, though it remained afloat. Here's the twist. Despite being harassed, the Philippines offered assistance, medical aid, towing support, even coordination for rescue. But China refused. Accepting help from Manila would have been a loss of face. Instead, it turned away, leaving the damaged cutter to limp back with difficulty. For the Philippines, this was symbolic. They had been bullied for years. But in this moment, they were the ones offering help to a much larger neighbor. For China, it was a bitter embarrassment. The Philippine government condemned China's dangerous and unlawful actions. Officials warned, if this continues, it's only a matter of time before lives are lost. China, try to shift blame. Beijing accused the Philippines of provocative maneuvers. State media called the Chinese response professional and lawful. But how do you explain crashing into your own ship? To the world, China's excuses fell flat. Within hours, the U.S. Navy deployed USS Higgins and USS Cincinnati near the shoal. Officially, they were conducting freedom of navigation operations. But the message was clear: Washington was watching. Analysts called the incident a self-inflicted wound of China's gray zone tactics. Singapore-based observers said it showed poor coordination between the People's Liberation Army Navy and the Coast Guard. Others warned, if China can't even manage its own ships, what happens when U.S. and Chinese forces meet head-on? This wasn't just a freak accident. It was a symptom of something deeper. China's strategy in the South China Sea relies on overwhelming presence, deploying dozens of ships, often in tight formations, to intimidate opponents. But the more crowded and aggressive these maneuvers become, the higher the risk of mistakes. Gray zone tactics work best when they scare others without escalating into war. But on August 11th, those tactics backfired, exposing the flaws in China's command and control. And here's the dangerous part. What if the cutter wasn't Chinese? What if it was Philippine, or worse, American? A similar collision could trigger regional war overnight. This incident wasn't just about ships. It was about credibility. And China's credibility just took a massive hit. The South China Sea isn't just about reefs and fishermen. It's about global power. 1/3 of world trade passes through these waters. Whoever controls the South China Sea controls vital shipping lanes, trillions in resources, and the strategic gateway between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. For years, China has built artificial islands, deployed missile systems, and militarized the region, challenging U.S. dominance. The Scarborough Shoal has been one of the last flashpoints not fully reclaimed. Now, with this collision, the world sees cracks in China's armor. Manila gains sympathy, Washington gains leverage, and Beijing faces questions about whether its rise as a naval power is as unstoppable as it claims. So, what happens now? Will China scale back its Coast Guard aggression to avoid another embarrassment? Will the Philippines push harder, emboldened by China's mistake? Or will Beijing double down, increasing military deployments and risking even deadlier incidents? One thing is certain, this collision will not be the last confrontation in the South China Sea. The waters are too valuable, the rivalries too deep, and the ambitions too great. But August 11th, 2025 will be remembered as the day China's strategy literally collided with itself. And for a moment, the world saw the reality behind the propaganda, a giant that sometimes stumbles. 2 Chinese ships, 1 collision, a single mistake that could have spiraled into something far worse. The South China Sea remains a powder keg, and every reckless maneuver, every aggressive pursuit, is another spark waiting to ignite. So, we leave you with this question: is China's naval rise unstoppable, or is it already cracking under the weight of its own aggression? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here at Battle Vault, where we uncover the military flashpoints shaping tomorrow's world.